We're live on Twitter. We are live on YouTube. We have a few exciting things to discuss. We are coming out of a terrible April. It's been not a good month for crypto. It's been not a good month for stocks. Obviously, this after a historic Q1 of 2024. Now the question obviously is, how is May going to play out? We have seen negative outflow, or like we have seen outflows out of all the ETFs, even out of BlackRock. Then we have seen days where all the ETFs had inflows, even Grayscale. We have seen liquidity coming back, so it's a bit of a back and forth, and we're gonna be discussing this. We're gonna be discussing the Hong Kong ETF launch. We're gonna be discussing a bit of the general kind of macro environment, and how to position yourself, dollar cost averaging. It's gonna be a nice episode. Fabio, how are you? Give us a bit of an kind of high level overview. How's the community? What are the general topics? What are people discussing?
Yeah, if you can believe crypto Twitter, we are already in a bear market again. Like sentiment is just it's moon and 1 million next week, or it is the top position. We are having two-year bear market right now. So of course this was a bit over exaggerated, but if you look, for example, at polls from bigger influencers, it's actually quite 50-50. I think Benjamin Cohen had a great poll where he
50,
said,
50 for what is the voting?
Let me actually check, but I think the poll that he made was what's next, like 70K or 50K.
Okay.
And I think it was pretty much 50-50. I'm going to check actually right now what or if I can find it. Oh yeah, here. He said, where is Bitcoin headed first, 54 or 74? And actually 60% are bullish. Surprisingly, the poll is 3 days old.
Okay.
So more people are actually bullish than bearish. I would also say that probably 74K is more likely than 54K. Just because we have seen you mentioned this, like the two main factors there are probably the liquidity that seems to be coming back, and also that grayscale outflows are kind of going away, so actually turning into inflows.
I love that picture here with Dwayne the Rock Johnson. That's like the 2020 halving, and then I don't know who that guy on the right is. Is the chubby, bulked, or let's say fat version of the Rock as the 2024 halving. I think that's quite funny. uh, yeah. Yeah, this is the months chart. I mean, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months of green candles. Then April with minus 15%. I mean, the minus 15% is, I mean, it is, I mean, obviously, if you look at when was the last time we had a minus 15% month? I mean, this is quite some time ago. We're talking about November 2022 here. June 2022 was nightmarish with 37%. So, yeah, I mean, sure. We haven't had a month like this in 1.5 years. So, I mean, I get it why people are obviously a bit on the more frustrated side. Yeah. How did you perceive April? I mean, on the stock market, same thing. People really talking about a historic bad months, but this is after like a historic strong months. How did you perceive April?
So for me, it was a bit weird because throughout the whole period in between January and April, I was expecting a correction. I was waiting for it. I had some capital
I
ready. I
remember
was
that.
waiting
Yeah.
for a drawdown pre-halving. That was a bit my expectation. It's not that I stopped my DCA, but I kind of was waiting for the 20 or the 30% dip, and we got it after the halving. So that now, since the halving, at least we are not performing that well. But here again, kind of if everybody is anticipating one thing, something else is going to happen, and the drawdown wasn't even that bad. I mean, I think still we have not seen the 30%, and in every other bull market in 2020 or in 2017, we saw plenty of 30% corrections. So we're holding up quite well, and right now I'm a bit cautious. Not that I'm expecting, like I posted a few days ago, I posted this meme of the McDonald's guy lying in bed. And these are like, it illustrates the late night thoughts that you have before you fall asleep. And like one of the thoughts, of course, I guess many of us had, and myself certainly, is what if 71K was the top? That's a thought that kind of crossed my head at several points in time. It's not that I have conviction in this, but it's a thought that crossed my mind a few times. I'm still bullish. I used to be, but I still am. And but I think, I don't know. Probably May. I don't expect much movement to the upside in May. Also, when we look at seasonality, like if you're tuning in on YouTube, Julian has. Oh yeah, this is the Bitcoin seasonality. I think May isn't. No, it's actually pretty
May
bullish.
is still above average, but then June goes to 8.5, July is 8.7, August has historically been negative, September has been negative, and it's only October that it's positive. I mean, there's this interesting one where that says if you had bought Bitcoin every year in September, I think, and sold in May, you would have made shitloads of money. Like I think on average, it's been like 1,000% or something in this 6 months on average, right? I mean, obviously, over the last years is not as big, but like if you average this out, and if you had bought Bitcoin in May and sold in September, you would have actually lost money. So that's kind of what the averages was. So yeah, quite interesting.
Yeah, maybe this year is a bit of an exception because it's an election year,
Yeah.
quite a big one. But my personal expectation is not a lot going to happen in May, but I'm slightly positive, or even somewhat bullish or very bullish towards the end of the year. Um, but that's strongly correlated with the whole macro situation that is going on. I'm not sure. Julian and myself, we briefly talked about an event that was happening this morning. Do you want to touch on that
Yeah.
as well, or?
I can. I haven't been much networking in the past couple of months just because of time and just focus. I mean, didn't really had to really focus on the company and everything, so I didn't have much time. But today there was a networking event for high net worth individuals, for investors, and it was quite impressive. I mean, the person speaking, I was quite impressed with that person. The way that I mean, generally, right when you go to some of these networking events, you see right away what's the kind of political affiliation that person has, right? How is that person speaking about Trump? How is that person speaking about Biden? You see, like, and from that you know exactly what that person's gonna say, right? So it doesn't matter. Like obviously, if that person is pro Trump, like everything that happened over the last 4 years has been terrible, and obviously the only way this can change is if Trump ever comes back into office, right? And obviously, if you're pro Biden, then man, this is all Trump's fault, and the last 3.5 years have had nothing to do with Biden's policies. It's all Trump's fault. And so, to me, what I just appreciate the most is, and I think you notice about me, is when you don't when you can say not everything about something is great, right? And that's just me. I love those sites. I love this the viewpoints, the different points of views, triangulating different kind of ideas, being able to have two contrarian points of view or holding two contrarian points of view at the same time. And he did a really really good job from a macro perspective there. What stood out to me is his kind of sharing how he sees this a lot of similarities to the 1970s. And obviously at that point Bitcoin didn't exist, so it's difficult to kind of draw conclusions what this can mean for Bitcoin. We can all hope that in the 1970s commodities, precious metals did really well. A few individual stocks that could really have that pricing power. I mean, to kind of put this back, this is the Vietnam War. The world went off the gold standard. There was a lot of money printing, money spending. I mean, the entire Apollo program happened during this time, 1969, right? The first man on the moon. So it's just a lot of spending, and in a few interesting points, right? For example, Nixon coming in, taking control of the Fed. Something that President Trump said if he would get back into power, he was gonna do as well. He wanted to take control of the Fed. So it was just very, very interesting to see the similarities. And then if you look at the inflation kind of gauge at that point, it shot up just like it did right now during COVID. It came back down to like 2.5%. And then it went up even higher than during that initial pump. So I think it went up to 6, 7%, maybe even 8% per year. Then it dropped down again to maybe 3, 4%, and then it shot over 10%. And then from that point on, that's when the Cold War started. That's when the entire kind of um, the not the Cold War, when the wall fell, Berlin Wall came down, the Cold War stopped, and so all this kind of we got into a historic kind of low inflationary environment in those last whatever 20, 30 years, with maybe a few exceptions. And so it was just really, really interesting to see the data, how it kind of correlates today. The only thing that I think is a bit different is the debt level, and I think that's the big question mark. Are we actually able to print ourselves out of this, or is this just gonna cause way more issues than just saying, you know what, we need to suck it up, we need to have some years of suffering, and but at the end we're gonna get through this? Or are politicians doing what they're always gonna do, which is just weaken up and go to the money printer? So yeah, we had this conversation before, Fabio. What are your thoughts on this?
So I follow a few people that talk about the comparisons to either the 40s or the 70s extensively, and I feel the similarities are there. I would say that debt levels are maybe a bit more comparable to the 40s, but the rest is maybe a bit more comparable to the 70s. So what does it mean for us as investors if this repeats? So in the 70s, for example, if you just would extrapolate this to the current times, and we kind of see high interest rates. So let's say interest rates stay where they are right now, but inflation is going to be higher. That would be an optimal scenario, what Paul and the US government would want. What would you as an investor need to hold? So in my opinion, that would be precious metals. So let's say gold here. I'm not sure about silver. Many people think that, gold and silver ratio and this and that. I'm
One
not going
thing
to
that
go
I
into
learned,
that.
maybe let me jump in. Can I ask you a question, Fabio? What do you think is the oldest futures contract traded, precious metals, not commodities, precious metals futures contract in the US?
I don't know. Gold?
Silver. Yeah, didn't know.
Yeah. So from a personal perspective, what my strategy, at least, when I am anticipating higher inflation and that rates are going to stay high as well. So many of you guys know I'm a big precious metals guy, especially gold. I also feel that right now in the current times, what is maybe some alpha or something to consider is energy, and both on a commodity level, meaning oil, meaning copper, meaning uranium. These are commodities because in inflationary cycles, commodities tend to do well because you cannot print them. And copper is needed for electrification, for electric cars, and so on. Uranium, of course, for nuclear energy, and oil, for cars and for basically for everything. And this is one aspect of it. And then, of course, also, if you want to be more on the speculative side, mining companies, the guys that mine uranium, gold, copper, or whatnot, they tend to be more volatile. And then energy as a sector in general. So you have like the S&P energy sector, or you have individual energy stocks where you can say, okay, ExxonMobil or Shell or companies like that, where you can really, because if we have a longer term inflationary environment like the 70s, it's not that risk on assets in general are going to outperform. Yeah, sure, they're going to do well, but you need to do better than the high inflation. So if you have inflation that is running at 6, 7, 8, 9%, and the S&P is only running at 6, you're basically losing 3% a year. So usually in inflationary cycles, you have these islands of like sectors or narratives that are performing exceptionally well, as we had this with tech and AI over the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. And energy could be a play to do. And the question that obviously we all have, and Julian and myself briefly talked on that a minute or two, is we don't really know how crypto is going to do. Of course, if you have inflation, M2, and the money supply is going to increase, and usually that means crypto is doing well. But we kind of don't know what would happen if we had that for a prolonged period of time, and if the whole of the market is going to do well, or as well here, if you only have like islands that are going to outperform. So there is still, I guess, an open question into the round of. Obviously, I'm a bit Bitcoin guy. I would wish that this is going to perform well, but I think we just don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. We all really hope that crypto is going to do well, but yeah, we're gonna find out afterwards. But that was quite interesting. I mean, Yeah, I shared the data here on YouTube a bit as well. I mean, interest rates at the moment is I mean, at the moment there's a budget of what two rate cuts. So that's yeah, at the moment for this year. Let's see. The entire concept of stagflation is getting stronger and stronger. So stagflation means slow economic growth, almost a recession. So stagnating growth and inflation, and this is obviously very, very weird, very difficult to invest in, because that means that prices are going up, but most companies cannot capture on that. There are a few companies who have that pricing power, and obviously, if you can find these companies that, well, on the one hand, can benefit from increasing prices and can really get that into the growth cycle for them, that would be very powerful. Difficult to find. And then obviously the safer bets here are generally gold, especially gold, just because in general gold normally doesn't outperform inflation. It tracks inflation really well, but it doesn't. Wait 1 second. Lovebug, I'm on a call. Lovebug, I'm on a call. Could you close the door? I'm gonna come out afterwards, okay? I can hide afterwards. Okay? Can you close the door, Lovebug? Thank you. Okay. Sorry, guys. My son just came in and wants to play hide and seek. Um, so gold historically hasn't shown to outperform inflation, but gold historically has shown to do extremely well when with the money printing, right? With the money supply. And I think that's why it's a bit of the on the safer side on everything. So yeah, I mean, definitely not an easy environment. I want to be very clear. Interesting here also this chart where liquidity. I mean, I'm showing a liquidity chart here of M2. It's been going up and going up. Obviously with COVID historically, and then 2022. That's where really kind of the liquidity expansion stopped, and especially in the middle of 2022, it really got destroyed, and that's why we had this really hard part. And now liquidity is starting to kind of pick up again. So yeah, could be very interesting. Yeah.
Maybe just as so we had a bit of a bird's eye overview. We talked a bit about macro, we talked a bit about crypto. Let me deal some hopium in between, because this chart of course liquidity is great for Bitcoin. There's this big correlation, but we have one or two other factors that make me bullish. So firstly, we have the liquidity chart, and then secondly, I briefly want to mention the Hong Kong ETF. And the perception of this was largely negative. And just to add maybe one or two things to the launch of the Hong Kong ETF. So in anticipation, the 3 days leading into the launch of the ETF, we actually performed. We pumped quite well. And then when the ETF launched, we had, I think, 3-4 days of sell-off. And then we dipped under 60K. And a lot of people said, the Hong Kong ETF isn't really a success. Just let me put some numbers on this. So adjusted for market size, the first day of the Hong Kong ETF was actually 22 times stronger than the launch of the US ETF, because there is a huge difference in size market between the US and Hong Kong. So just to put this in number, the US market is approximately, the ETF market is approximately 6,500 billion, while the Hong Kong ETF market is only about 50 billion. So it's about 130x in difference. And the first day, also there were estimates, like what they expected the first day to look like. And in Hong Kong, this was 125 million was estimate, and it was actually slightly over that with 127 million. And now still, they're one of the best ETFs to ever launch in the Hong Kong area. So also there, it's actually a success story. The same is true for US ETFs. And there as well, we saw GBTC basically having outflows only. And now I think since May 3rd, we
Yeah, there were
have
2 days. 2 days.
so yeah, 2 days of inflows, which is also a bit of a turnaround. And we are in an election year. There is some macro uncertainty, but sometimes it's important to take a step back, because many of you joined this industry, let's say in 2020, 2019, 2021, a few years ago. If we would have a conversation 3 years ago, and I would have told you that 1 or 2 weeks after the halving in 2024, the Bitcoin is holding up above 60,000, all of you guys would have said, "Oh, that's super bullish. That's
Yep.
crazy." It, at the halving, at an all-time high, that wow, let me pull in some capital right now. Let me buy more. So if you just step back a bit and kind of watch all of this market from a different time perspective, we're super bullish. It's amazing. And even though we might have a boring May or a boring summer, uh, it's still it's exciting. And on one hand, it's a great opportunity if we have a slow summer. Just keep your DCA going and profit at the end of the year. That's at least what I plan to do.
No, I mean, really good points. I mean, one one perspective, I agree that the ETF launch in Hong Kong was a success for Hong Kong. I want to put some perspective on it. I think for Bitcoin, it was totally irrelevant. I think we discussed this before. That is important. It's the same thing as if someone owns $1,000, right? And then puts in $1,000 into Bitcoin. For that person, that's obviously significant because that person goes all in. But let's be fair, for Bitcoin, it's totally irrelevant if one person invests $1,000 or not, right? So, yeah, just want to put this into perspective for everything. Yeah.
Maybe one point to mention is, and this kind of haven't hasn't made major headlines, and it's also not popping up on crypto Twitter. But what are your thoughts about? Is it First Republic or One Republic? Like, there's another big bank that just went
First
bankrupt in the US.
Republic. Yeah, First Republic. I mean, I saw it a little bit in the news. I don't know. I thought it was instantly picked up, so that's why I don't think there was so much like instantly bought out. I think it was kind of a pretty much straightforward deal. I don't know.
Is
What are
there?
your thoughts? I didn't look
Yeah.
so detailed into it. Didn't follow it so much.
So when we go back exactly 1 year, we had the Silicon Valley and another republic. Wasn't it also what was the bank in 2023 that also went bankrupt simultaneously with Silicon Valley Bank? Um, yeah, we had plenty of banks going belly up in 2023, and everybody was just anticipating, okay, the banks are illiquid. There's a banking crisis coming. The Fed bought them out, and then it just kind of died down, and nobody was talking about it ever again. And now we are a year later, and another bank is going belly up. Of course, there isn't really a discussion or anything. It's basically just, okay, we're going to save it. We're going to basically allocate a bit of capital to it, and business as usual. There is an argument to be made that we haven't seen the last of that. That there are, like many banks, there are people that make the argument that almost all banks are currently underwater just because they are overexposed in bonds, and the bonds, if you sell them market to market, you only get, like, I don't know, 60 cents on the dollar, meaning they are illiquid. They are basically a bankrupt business. But because of the Fed's programs that they are basically hold to majority, or the markets that they offer to kind of give them face value for all of these bonds, with this magic trick, they're liquid or solvent right now. And I just don't know enough about the banking sector if this is going to be a problem. I guess with the action that we've seen from the, let's say, public side, from the Fed and from other central banks, it's not going to be a problem initially. But if you need to do that too much, if you need to kind of save or make banks solvent again, it's obviously going to reflect in global liquidity. There is some money printing basically needed to save the system, and maybe that's also why we see M2 picking up right now. So I don't know if I should be bullish or bearish.
I mean, good. I mean, today also to be very clear, right? Today the speaker on that macro outlook was very bearish on bonds, very bearish, right? So just to be very clear. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Firat listed all of the banks. So we had Silicon
yeah.
Valley, Signature Bank, Citizen Bank, Heartland Tri-State Bank, and First Republic Bank all basically went belly up. And then, of course, you also had like candidates like Credit Suisse in Switzerland.
Um, I think one event to really look for is in about 2 weeks. Potentially, we're gonna see an Ethereum spot ETF. What are your thoughts? So the main deadline here, 23rd, 24th. What's your what are your thoughts on this?
So I don't believe that we're going to see an ETF because these are government decisions. It's government agencies and so on. And one thing I know about humans is they are not able to keep their mouth shut. So if there would be an ETF, they would they are telling their wife or I don't know a hooker down the street or whatever, and this information kind of makes it makes it out, and the market sniffs it out and the market starts to pump. So if there would be like the moment I see ETH outperforming and kind of out of nothing, just chugging along and going up, that's the moment where I think we are going to get an ETF. But that's not what we're seeing right now. And I just don't believe that they can keep something like that a secret. Government people are, I don't know, all people. It doesn't really matter if they work for the government or for the private sector. People talk, markets are efficient, markets are sniffing. We saw that with Bitcoin. Even we knew 6 months ahead that the
Yeah, that's
ETF is
true.
going to come in January. So,
That
and I
is
think the
true.
same is going to be true for Ethereum. What do you think? Do you think there is a real chance that the ETF is coming? Or
There is a chance, but I see this as at relatively low. I don't see this.
yeah.
I agree. If there's an ECTF, I think it would really surprise everyone. I really think so. I think at the moment it would be a humongous surprise. I mean, there's a huge upside there, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything priced in right now. I really think there's almost nothing of an ECTF price into the ETH price, but I think that's legitimately so, sadly. Yeah.
I
And I
mean,
do think, I mean, there was also an interesting one. Sorry, I'll let you go first, and then I share about an interview that I gave over the weekend to a large financial newspaper. But yeah, but I'll let you go first.
sure. So, look, I mean, this is my third cycle. And if I have learned one thing in all of these three cycles, is that I was too bullish too fast and not bullish enough to
Mm,
at the end of the cycle. And what I can see on Twitter is everybody is bearish on Bitcoin dominance, is bullish on altcoins, is talking about alt seasons, and it's 2.5 years. And usually, and this is just history, don't take it up with me, I'm just the messenger. Usually, it takes into the halving year, 6 months after the halving, for all season to start. So, still now, we are still 6 months early when it comes to all season and full bullishness. And that's just a lot of people right now, in my personal opinion, are way too bullish on, let's say, down the risk curve altcoins, and way too bullish on even Bitcoin. I think we still have at least. So I'm looking at, and here I'm going to make enemies. I already know. So uh, I'm going to look at the Bitcoin ETH pair or the ADA Bitcoin pair. And even though I'm somewhat of a maximalist, I do own some altcoins, and I am planning to buy more altcoins. But for ADA, for example, I'm going to wait for 500 Satoshis. And there are so many people that were DCAing 2.5 years for this. I think the moment of 500 Satoshis will come. And Ethereum, in my opinion, still has 10 or 20% to drop on its Bitcoin pair. And then it's going to be an amazing trade. It's going to be one of the best trades you can ever make, buying an Ethereum in maybe in 2, 3, 4 months. And it's probably going to outperform Bitcoin from then on out. It's just that in a bear market, and everybody should know that, is Bitcoin is the most stable and it's outperforming all of the other coins.
it
But
is, yeah.
as many of you know, that can turn on a dime. And usually in bull markets, altcoins tend to outperform Bitcoin. It depends a bit when you bought them. If you were DCAing from the top until now, you're down massively. But if you were able to kind of pick that bottom period before we go into alt season, you can massively outperform it and take home some nice gains. Yeah.
I think that's a good point. I mean, I hadn't given any interviews in the last 6 months, and yeah, and a well-known journalist of mine, or I know that journalist well, reached out to me after the past couple of weeks. I mean, he has been reaching out regularly, and I never responded, but this time I did now, and he said, "Yeah, look, now maybe time to just talk a bit. I don't want to talk so much about the company, don't want to talk so much about that, but we can talk about the markets. But it's okay now for me. I just didn't want to. I didn't feel like discussing markets or something. I wanted to clean up everything that we had to clean up, and I made a very similar statement because that person asked me as well. He said, "Hey, what about altcoins? What about Bitcoin?" I said, "Look, uh, there was a very clear winner over the last 1.5 years. That was Bitcoin. And prior to that, it was clearly Ethereum versus Bitcoin. And I said, look, if we're seeing the Ethereum ETF in May, which I told him, I said, I give it maybe a 25% chance, then I think that's when the Ethereum rally is going to start. And if not, then I agree with you. Then I think we're probably going to see it after the summer. So, yeah, that's a bit of similar kind of view.
So you didn't talk with the journalist about the company. Just maybe one question from my side when it comes to the company. So the last time we spoke was 2 weeks ago, because last week was Labor Day, public holiday, almost worldwide, and then a week earlier was slightly before you guys were in court,
Yeah.
ba- basically, battling out a bit. Yeah, and you did share a bit of a few stuff, a few things on Twitter. We had to celebrate because in December there was a winding up application filed by your co-founder, and this got dismissed, which is a huge win for us as employees, for you as a
100%.
CEO, for Bake as a company. Can you share some insights or a little bit on this?
Sure. I mean, I just pulled up that tweet here that I posted, which is the winding up application got dismissed. That's the official court order. Everyone can download this themselves. It's a public document, and yeah. So Singapore is very transparent when it comes to that. You can download it, read it yourself, see it yourself. But I just highlighted basically the two orders that were given, that the case was dismissed, and that user has to pay $15,000 plus disbursement. So it's actually quite a chunk more. That the 15,000 is just basically the fine. And so, yeah, I mean, for me, kind of reflecting on this, I mean, it's been, and again, I posted this also on Twitter. To me, that's not over yet. There's a couple of things. First of all, I made using afterwards. I made using an offer for, yeah, that he can sell his shares. That I yeah, I think this would make the most sense for the company. I think this would make the most sense for the employees, for the customers. My plan is actually, and I mean, I had discussed this internally. I mean, this is not, so I'm just sharing this publicly right now, but I mean, internally, everyone knows this. My plan is actually to buy everyone's shares, so that if possible, right? I mean, obviously, it really depends on. It's still, everything is still subject to everything. There's nothing agreed, nothing signed, or that there's no commitment to any of this. But that hopefully, I don't know, at some point this year, I own 100% of the company. Then, when this is done, what I would actually love to do very transparently, I want everyone to see the damage that winding up application has done. I would love to share basically customer numbers, how much these customer numbers have dropped. It's gonna shock the living shit out of you. How much, obviously, how it has impacted the DFI price. It's gonna, I mean, this is public. You can see this yourself. It's gonna show you how company assets, like customer assets, it's it's absolutely shocking, right? And obviously, I mean, I can understand this, right? So yeah, and then I'm gonna be very transparent about this. I'm gonna be very transparent internally about this. That this is now the time to really turn this around, build that trust again with our customer base, build the trust again internally, build the trust with partners, and yeah, it's look, and it's gonna be really like a moment where I'm gonna be very honest and say, look, there's no guarantee to success here. There is no guarantee. We're gonna have to work really, really hard as a team. We're gonna have to really win everyone's trust again, and it's gonna be up to the customers if they want to support us on this ride, and that's gonna be the key thing. And the team that's gonna be on this with us, they gonna understand that we're basically back to square one, and now it's from 0 to 1 again. It really is. It's not from 1 to 10, and it's super sad. Really, I think it's absolutely frustrating for everyone that this winding up application was filed. I am really, really glad that the judge dismissed it. To me, there were just a couple of points, right? And I shared this in a town hall as well in the company, where I talked about and said, look, if there were a lot of concerns from people who said, hey, Julian, do you think, like, using being a Singaporean, you being a foreigner, do you think it's going to be a fair fight? Do you think you're going to have a fair shot in this? And obviously, you have these concerns, right? You do. I mean, I talked to my lawyer about this, and I said, hey, look, how do you see this, and so on. And my lawyer was very confident. He said, look, the Singapore system is extremely merit based. It doesn't discriminate there. And I don't know. was obviously, I mean, sure, the decision went in my favor, so of course it's very easy for me to be happy about it. I get it. But look, the merits were on the table, and the judge was very strong in the statement. Everyone who was there heard the statements. The judge was very definitive, was very clear. He used words like using, tried to use a quick fix for his problems. And so I, yeah, I was just very impressed with that. And it gave me a lot of hope for how a company in Singapore is, how the legal certainty that you have. And so, yeah, I thought that was very, very empowering. And it was also, in my opinion, empowering just for for our side, right? For using to see what he's doing there is not was not the right thing. And so, yeah, but still, that from my side doesn't mean that I don't want using having a chance to be to have a share spot. The price I didn't. I look. I think some other people maybe at some point afterwards they tried to really bargain slash. I didn't do any of that. The negotiations actually are the same price that we had discussed during the winding up. So there's absolutely no unfairness or anything. We and most of the times the deals fall through because of a lot of additional clauses, and we I tried to remove all of them, make it super simple, make it very very straightforward. So let's hope we can get to the table. Let's hope yeah we can really clean this up. That we can really yeah be on the way up, and then and it's gonna be it's really it's gonna be at that point it's gonna be do or die. It's gonna be very clear. We either gonna get back to that shiny moment that we had, and we're gonna do really well, or the reputational damage and all the destruction that happened with that winding up is going to be too difficult to overcome. And I'm going to give it my all. I know that the team's going to give it their all. I really hope that we're going to get the support from the customers at that point. It's not. I mean, we're not there yet, right? At the moment, there's still it's not there. So I hope we can do this year. That would be the ideal. So yeah, that's going to be a main focus.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for sharing this. I think, from an employee perspective, what maybe customers on the outside not see is that we as employees we celebrated this moment. A lot of employees went out, had drinks together. The sentiment shifted. For us as employees, it was a bit
I wanted to.
paralyzing.
I still have the receipt for me. So I paid personally, and I paid the bill after winning. And then I choked to my CFO. I said, "Hey, I'm just I'm gonna send this in as a company reimbursement and put use in CC." And my CFO was like, "Let's not do that." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, fine. I was just kidding." But I still have that receipt with me. It's gonna be a cherished trophy.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. I mean, it's for all of us. It's like a moment where we can catch a breath, and I think sentiment within the company definitely changed. There is more hope, and there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We all feel very confident that within weeks or months that we can have this maybe rising from the ashes with a clear focus and a motivated team with people that want to be here, with people that want to do this, and no major obstacles in the way. So yeah, and look, if you still follow us, what we're doing, if you're tuning into these Twitter Spaces, and maybe you have neglected checking the app, what I can tell you is you should definitely make sure to check the app, because we were not asleep at the wheel. Even though we had a few obstacles in our way, we never had this many and this exciting releases. I would say we have better releases in 24 than we had in 23. Even though we had more obstacles in the way. And from a tech side like that, you were able to switch any asset into any other asset, the dust converter, the new smart bundles. The app looks and feels clean, and there's still more features to come. We definitely came a long way. And now that, let's say, we do a final cleanup and get everything out of the way, there is definitely a moment to kind of start this up again and go big, up and onwards. Yeah.
Go big or go home. That's really gonna be the mantra. Yeah. Awesome. Fabio, that's it. That's all. I got nothing else. Anything from your side? No.
No, no, that's it. Yeah.
Then I'll go and play hide and seek with my kids. See if I can hide well enough. Let's see, everyone. Hey, have a good Wednesday. Have a good evening here in Singapore. A good rest of the day in the rest of the world. Fabio, thank you so much. See you all next week. Please check out the app. See all the progress, everything that we're doing. Thank you so much, everyone. All the best. Bye bye. Cheers.